Those who always win are not the strongest. They're the ones who know when to move, when to shut up, and when to do nothing at all. While everyone else is elbowing their way to the front, they stand back and watch, with the quiet ease of someone who has seen this movie before. People call it luck. It isn't. Where others spot coincidences, they see patterns. Where others flinch, they decide. Machiavelli and Sun Tzu never met. They lived centuries apart, on opposite ends of the world, and yet they arrived at the same place. Both figured out that winning has nothing to do with fortune and everything to do with self-possession and the ability to read a room. Both understood that the real fight is never out there. It's in here, not swords, not politics, the mind. Here's something worth sitting with. Every significant loss you've had wasn't about talent. It was about timing. You were right, but you said it at the wrong moment. The opening was there, but you moved before you understood the ground. You trusted someone without seeing that they already had a plan. That gap between who plays the game and who gets played is what this is really about. Most people go through life reacting, putting out fires, explaining themselves, never quite realizing that someone else drew the map. And the strangest part is that the thing holding them back isn't always external. Sometimes it's that voice in the head going, "Say something, defend yourself, don't let them win." That voice has no interest in your success. It serves your impulses, and impulse is where every good strategy goes to die. Machiavelli, the ground beneath your feet. Control your environment, and you control your fate. That was Machiavelli's opening move, not about grabbing power, about understanding the terrain that power moves across. And that terrain is almost never physical. It's psychological, emotional. It's the invisible tangle of what people want, what they fear, and what they'd never say out loud. He saw something most people still don't want to accept. Being decent isn't enough. You have to understand how things actually work. Virtue without strategy is just innocence dressed up as principle. Idealism, without situational awareness, is a slow form of self-destruction. Whoever doesn't understand human nature will eventually be shaped by it. Picture yourself walking into a meeting, smiles, pleasantries, careful language. But underneath that surface, there are competing agendas, fear hiding behind deference, ambition wearing the costume of teamwork. Machiavelli would tell you, stop listening to the words. Watch what people do. Truth doesn't travel in sentences. It travels in gestures, hesitations, the things people choose not to say. His advice was practical. Learn to read what people actually want. Watch how someone behaves when they don't get their way. Notice who flatters you for no obvious reason. Pay attention to who goes quiet when something uncomfortable enters the room. Power doesn't announce itself. It moves quietly, and whoever can't see it ends up serving it without knowing. The ones who consistently win aren't the best informed. They're the most attentive. The wise person, Machiavelli argued, doesn't wrestle with reality. They work with it. They don't fight the current. They learn to use it. When the river floods, the fool blames the river. The wise person builds a channel. Same thing plays out every day. Someone comes at you verbally. What's your first move? Retaliate. Justify yourself. Every reactive response costs you ground. Every extra word you didn't need to say is a step backward. Real strategists understand that silence is a tool, and often a sharper one than anything you could say. Machiavelli wasn't advocating for dishonesty. He was advocating for clear-eyed thinking. He had observed that people are inconsistent, contradictory, and frequently driven by emotion. So he warned that the careful leader shouldn't even trust their own read of things too completely. not paranoia, just watching the world without the gloss of wishful thinking. Think about a time you were badly let down by someone. In hindsight, the signals were probably there the whole time. A vague commitment, a glance that didn't land right, a shift in tone you couldn't quite name. But you were so invested in what you wanted to be true that you filtered out what was actually happening. For Machiavelli, that was the fatal mistake. Mistaking desire for reality. That's why he kept coming back to preparation. Luck, he said, isn't a force. It's an intersection where readiness meets the right moment. Winners don't rely on luck finding them. They set up the conditions so that when it shows up, they're already positioned. His strategist wasn't a warrior. He was a gardener. The gardener doesn't control the weather, but knows it well enough to plan around it. That's the model. Not reacting to conditions, but studying them. And when it's time to act, you already know exactly what you're standing on. 3 habits before any significant move. Observe first. Analyze before deciding. Calculate before acting. There's a detail about Machiavelli's own life worth mentioning. When he was thrown in prison on political charges, most people assumed he was finished. Instead, he wrote some of his clearest, most penetrating work in a cell. No bitterness, no self-pity. He watched. He thought. The prince didn't come out of comfort or safety. It came out of a man who had lost everything except his ability to think straight. It's not a guide for tyrants. It's a study in how to stay lucid when the world around you stops making sense. Sun Tzu. Win before the fight starts. The highest form of warfare is winning without fighting. In practical terms, today, that means this: living with enough clarity that most conflicts neutralize themselves before they fully form. The greatest power isn't what forces things, it's what guides them. Sun Tzu wasn't only talking about armies, he was talking about mental position. His work is really a manual for managing 3 things that are always in shorter supply than money: energy, time, and attention. He teaches you to observe without hurrying, to think before you move, and to use reality as it is rather than push against it. First, always assess the ground. Before you reply to something that got under your skin, before you sign anything, before you commit to a position, stop. Ask yourself what's actually going on. What emotions are running underneath this? What am I assuming is true that I haven't checked? The strategist reads in layers. What's being said, what's being avoided, and what's really intended. Watch the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is automatic, friction producing a spark. Responding is deliberate, a light you choose to switch on. Sun Tzu believed advantage comes from seeing early. Whoever sees first conserves energy, sidesteps confusion, and turns stumbles into adjustments. Second, protect your center. Your center is the internal place from which real decisions come, not the ones made under pressure, not the ones made out of fear. If you put it on display constantly, anyone can pull you into their tempo. Protecting it isn't the same as hiding. It's caring about the quality of what you decide. Listen widely. Speak when it matters. Hold some silence for yourself. Third, make time work for you. Impatience produces mental static, and static ruins your read of the situation. Waiting isn't the same as doing nothing. It's letting your perspective settle. What changes if you give it an hour? A day? A lot of conflicts simply expire when the emotion underneath them does. In that quiet, the right move tends to surface on its own. Sun Tzu also talked about knowing your own patterns. When during the day do you consistently make your worst calls? Which people make you rush? What subjects trigger that need to be right at any cost? Knowing where you're vulnerable is how you stop being controlled by it. His favorite image was water. Water doesn't fight the rock. It moves around it, learns its shape, finds the opening. It doesn't abandon its nature. It adapts its form. The mind should work the same way, directional without being rigid. Once you find that quality, you stop forcing doors and start noticing windows, gaps, rhythms that were there all along. The balance almost nobody finds. Picture a scale. On one side, Machiavelli's precision, that surgical ability to read people without being deceived by the surface. On the other, Sun Tzu's composure, that steady patience that watches events unfold without being pulled into them. When those two things coexist, something rare appears, what you might call quiet strategy. The equation is easy to say, hard to live. Mental clarity plus honest reading of your environment equals actual direction. Because mastering the outside world without knowing yourself means eventually losing yourself in it. And knowing yourself without understanding the dynamics around you means ending up alone with your principles. Wisdom lives between those, between looking inward and moving outward. Machiavelli watched people and found patterns. Sun Tzu watched nature and found rhythms. At their core, they were both pointing at the same skill, recognizing how things flow and learning to move with it instead of against it. People who consistently win live this way. They think without heat and act with precision because they know that unchecked emotion fogs the view, and the view is everything. They breathe before they act. They watch before they answer. They calibrate before they commit. It shows in how they communicate too. They say less, but what they say lands. They listen more because they've figured out that what actually matters is almost never in the headline. In a world drowning in noise, their quiet is its own kind of leverage. And then there's time. Sun Tzu called it an invisible weapon. Machiavelli said, patience isn't passivity. It's calculation with a longer horizon. The impatient reveal their hand. The patient sharpen theirs. While others exhaust themselves rushing, the strategist is letting things ripen. 3 principles that hold. Think clearly. Move calmly. Clarity removes fear. Calm removes error. Together they produce something like precision. Talk less, take in more. Every word you didn't need to say costs you something. Real listening is a way of seeing more than what's in front of you. Use time. Don't be used by it. Whoever rushes loses the long view. Whoever waits with purpose starts seeing what others have already walked past. The laws nobody teaches you. Somewhere along the way, if you're paying attention, something clicks. This isn't about being faster or tougher. It's about thinking at a different depth and acting from a clearer place. Consistent winners don't wing it. They operate by principles that most people never identify because they're too busy reacting to look for them. Anticipation. Don't wait for the problem. See it coming while it's still small. Sun Tzu's core argument was that the battle is won before it begins, not during. In real life, this translates to one specific skill: reading early. The unusual silence, the look that slides away at the wrong moment, the hunch that keeps surfacing. Before any decision that matters, sketch 3 versions of what might happen. The good one, the middling one, the one you hope doesn't come. Not to live in anxiety, to stop being blindsided. The mask. Not every feeling you have needs an audience. Not because honesty is overrated, but because emotional discipline is underrated. Machiavelli knew whoever reveals their position before the moment is right loses leverage they'll never recover. In a negotiation, holding your composure reads as confidence and unsettles the other side. In a difficult conversation, Staying steady while the other person speaks gives them room to say more than they planned. The mask isn't about hiding your truth. It's about not letting your impulse speak before your judgment has finished thinking. The center that doesn't break. Respond from your values and your purpose, not from the raw nerve that just got hit. Machiavelli and Sun Tzu had no disagreement here. Equanimity is the armor of serious thinkers. Every time you lose your footing, you hand the situation to whoever provoked you. Every unconsidered response is a transfer of control. But when you stay level in the middle of chaos, something shifts. The room reorganizes around that steadiness. One practice that actually works. Before you act, 3 beats. First, observe what's happening. Second, interpret what it means. Third, then decide what to do. That gap between stimulus and response is where strategy actually lives. Last, those who always win are not people who defeat others. They're people who have learned to get out of their own way. And they keep learning it because it never stops being necessary. And when they get there, something changes in how the world responds to them. One question worth keeping. How many times have you won something that mattered without having to fight for it? Those moments aren't accidents. They're the code working. And the code doesn't live in any book or in any framework someone else built. It lives in you, waiting. Think like Machiavelli. See people as they are, not as you wish they were, without bitterness, without illusion. Move like Sun Tzu, at the right moment, with no more force than necessary. And through all of it, stay yourself, grounded, clear-eyed, and pointed at something real. The person who truly wins doesn't impose anything. They understand. And because of that, the world stops pushing back.